This is the Manga Mavericks podcast on allcomic.com, episode 67. We are a podcast not only dedicated to talking about manga as a medium, but as an industry. I'm Colton, and hey, it looks like we have an episode for you guys this week after all. Because we kind of went back and forth about what we were going to do for this week in particular, whether we were going to just not upload anything at all, whether we were going to finally upload the Dragon Ball Super podcast we recorded long ago at this point. We had a couple of ideas as to what we were going to do, but it looks like Lum will not be able to put up the Dragon Ball Super podcast like he wanted to this week, which is a shame because I, just like many of you, am still very much looking forward to listening to that when it comes out. So instead, this week, we're going to kind of just move up the release of one of our episodes. Something that I recorded with Maxy Barnard from Friendship Effort Victory that we were going to put out next week, but I figured with all the news that we're going to have to record about from Anime NYC alone and all the licenses that have just come out in the past week alone, that we might as well just make this its own episode and just focus on news next time or whatnot. So yeah, for now, you're going to get to listen to a very awesome discussion that I had with Maxy about another canceled Jump comic. That's right, it's another one of those episodes. Let's see, I think we discussed it in the show proper, but first it was first it was Hi-Fi Cluster, then Love Rush, then Takamagahara, and now with our fourth canceled Jump series that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about Stealth Symphony from Ryohgo Narita and Yoichi Amano. Narita you may recognize as the author of such hits as Baccano and Durarara. Again, I don't know why I'm telling you this because we'll go over all this in the actual discussion. But yeah, this was a really fun discussion I had with Maxy. I really love recording these kinds of podcasts with him. And I hope we could do even more of them next year on the show. But yeah, until then, that's basically what you're going to be listening to this episode. Again, we will be basically doing an all-news episode next episode because, again, there's just that much news that has come out since the last episode. A lot of really big news, too, that we're going to be talking about in terms of new anime announcements and new licenses and whatnot. A lot of big stuff coming up that you may or may not already know, but we will get to it when we get to it here in the future. But for now, please enjoy our discussion of Stealth Symphony. And now it is that time of the year. I say that like this is an annual thing. We just kind of do this whenever we want. So in case I didn't say it at the top of the show, I have with me Maxy Barnard once again from Friendship Effort Victory. Hi, Maxy. How's it going?
Hey, I'm pretty good. It feels good that I can actually be like, oh yeah, from Friendship Effort Victory, and it actually means more than just like a website with nothing on it again now. It's like, yeah. I am from there. Things happen there again.
Oh yeah, that's a podcast I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. In case I didn't say it at the top of the show, I have you on once again to talk about more canceled Jump series, which is something I always look forward to. Actually,
we're firmly digging our way through all the ones that Viz have run in their digital magazine at this point. Like we're a good few down, I think.
Yeah, so let's see. We've covered Love Rush, Hi-Fi Cluster, and Takamagahara at this point. So don't be surprised if I'll probably reference a couple of those series here and there at some point in the show. If you haven't listened to any of those episodes, please go listen to those. Like I said, this is something I really enjoy doing for Manga Mavericks with Maxy, is just covering these old series from Jump. Because I think I mentioned on the last episode that those were basically my favorite episodes of Friendship Effort Victory, is when you Maxy got to talk about stuff that didn't last too long in Jump that will really never ever get an English release ever. So, I kind of figured, let's carry that over to Manga Mavericks. That's something I really want to do. So here we are. But the series we're going to be talking about this time around is really interesting on a lot of levels because at first I thought this was I remember this being a Jump start, but like when I really looked back, Stealth Symphony by Ryohgo, Narita, and Yoichi Amano is what we're going to be talking about this time around. This was one of the few series that the Viz Shonen Jump picked up for its entire run, like literally 2 months before Viz began their Jumpstart initiative.
Yeah, they had a lot of faith in this. This was up there with Cross Manage and Barrage, just sort of those early waves of being like, this will be a hit. And kind of much like those, and Takamagahara, I guess, didn't really work out. Which is kind of wild, because I don't know how much you know about Yoichi Amano. He's one of those artists that people all over the world have expected to become a really huge name. But, like, outside of that, the authors, like, Ryogo Narita, like, one of the big deal light novel authors out there.
Yeah, in case anyone doesn't know, Ryogo Narita, having him do a series in Jump is kind of a big deal because he's also the author behind such series as Durarara and Bakuno. And so, I know a lot of people really like both of those series. I believe both of those light novel series are available in English at this point, so if anyone wants to check those out, you should definitely do so. I really enjoyed the Bakuno anime when I first sat down to watch that a couple years back at this point, and I've admitted on the show that like I don't really read any light novels, unfortunately. But if I do start reading light novels at any point in the future, Bakuno is definitely like one of the first titles I want to check out because again, I enjoyed the anime so much for that. Maxy, I don't know, how familiar are you with have you ever seen Bakuno, Durarara? Ever read any of them? How familiar are you with Narita's work? I guess before you got into Stealth Symphony.
Allow me to put it this way. I have read one work by Ryogo Narita. It's Stealth Symphony. I don't know why I've done so badly. It's like I'm aware of the critical reception. I've seen clips of the anime before. I've got a friend who's intent on me seeing Durarara, and I want to because it's the noise a motorcycle makes, and I think that's a great naming convention. But I've just not gotten around to it, and that feels like a shame. I feel like Narita's done like some Bleach novels recently as well. Yeah, which like I want to be all over that because I really like Bleach, guys. I don't know what to tell you. But it's been one of those things where I've just never gotten around to it before, and I need to correct that because not to give too much away for this, but I really quite like Stealth Symphony and the writing in it especially. So like, I feel like I would really get along with this author's works.
Mm-hmm. As far as Yoichi Amano goes, I had never heard of this artist, before Stealth Symphony. As far as anything that they've done for Shonen Jump, I guess the series that he had before this was called Overtime, which from the little research I did about the series, apparently it involves baseball and ghosts.
Yeah. I want to say Overtime it's the first failure of a baseball series in what has been a long line of failures for baseball series in Jump. It really led the way, and it's not bad. It's about like a timid kid being taken over by a very sort of sharp delinquent kid to like play baseball. It's alright. And he also did a Akaboshi Ibn Suikoden, which is another twist on the sort of Suikoden tales. It had art that was very reminiscent of Hoshinengi and all the sorts of work by Ryu Fujisaki. People didn't really bite on it, and so that got cancelled too. And he's done stuff for Square, like Ex-Samurai, which was about samurais that dressed a bit like they were modern people, which was kind of odd. I read the whole thing of that. I cannot tell you what happened. I've completely forgotten. And he's got a couple of series now. Mist Gear's Blast started up earlier this year, and he's got another one that's on hiatus called Anna no Majina, which ran for like 4 volumes on Jump Plus, went on hiatus, and then he's come back to Jump Plus going, yeah, but I'm doing a different series now. Which is a ballsy move. I'm trying to check my really fun chart I've made of assistants, see if there's anything interesting, and I think you may actually have a slight interest in Yoichi Amano's history of being an assistant, because I want to say that he worked for Hideaki Sorachi, the author of Gintama.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I never would have guessed, just because like, I don't know, like it was easy for me to be able to tell like say, oh yeah, like Kenta Shinohara, like, you know, when I found out, oh yeah, he used to be Sorachi's assistant, like I could tell, because obviously between the two, like obviously Shinohara has, I think, gained a lot more influence from working with Sorachi than I think Amano has, at least visually speaking.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Like, if you were to have held me at absolute gunpoint and said, who has Yoichi Amano worked for, I would have always guessed Takeshi Obata, because I feel like you could draw a line between those two styles. But they've apparently got no connection at all, which I find kind of wild, because his art style is somewhere between Ryu Fujisaki and a more lively version of Takeshi Obata.
I could see that, yeah.
I know isn't saying much, because Obata's art is so incredibly stiff. But, like, it's the best way I can think of to describe it. And it's neat. I like it. I really like it on this series in particular. It nails a lot of effects that you wouldn't think would necessarily work in comics, because at its core, this is a series about an invisible character.
So yeah, we should probably just get started and talk about what Stealth Symphony is actually about then. So, Stealth Symphony is essentially about a young boy named Jig who travels to a city called Jimbocho, in order to find someone to help him remove a curse in the form of a device attached to his back that has the ability to counter any attack thrown at him. And as you could tell, I have this scripted out because, man, there's a lot going on with the series, and I really needed something written in front of me to be able to explain what was going on, because there's a lot going on.
It is dense.
So basically, until he can get this thing removed, he seeks the help of a security company, V&V, in order to protect not just himself, but mostly everyone around him, because he's basically afraid of hurting people with his powers accidentally. And as Maxy mentioned, the one assigned to basically bodyguard Jig is an invisible man named Troma. Basically, the only way with you being able to, like, pick him out of the crowd is the fact that he wears a green mask with a smiley face on it. It's kind of cute. But, you know, the story kind of goes on, and essentially, as per the result of a failed hit put out on Jig, he finds out that the person responsible for attaching this device on him basically wants to kill him and take it back, because, as it turns out, it is an ancient artifact called a dragon heirloom, one that this person was basically using Jig for, like, as a guinea pig to basically, like, test its abilities out. And from there, basically, Jig begins his life in Jibocho, finding a stable, earnest living, and meeting all sorts of new characters along the way. But things are not always as they appear. And that's how I end my synopsis. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. That's a very good synopsis. An interesting addendum to the synopsis. And at this point, I have to mention, to talk about this series in any sort of real way, we have to spoil pretty much all of it, because a lot happens. So the majority of that synopsis is lies.
Yeah, so, like, Stealth Symphony was really interesting to me because, like, basically, like, you know, everything that happens in the first chapter, like, you know how I mentioned, like, oh, well, you know, this thing that's attached to Jig has the ability to counteract any attack against him, which that gets changed, like, a couple of times, because it goes from that to, like, oh, it can only counterattack anything with, like, some sort of hostile intent. And then it turns out, well, that's not even really entirely true either.
Yeah, like, so this dragon heirloom in particular is eventually revealed to be something more like an egg that is made to turn the person wearing it into the black dragon, the big bad dragon. Because dragons are this mythical force in the world. They existed before; they were all taken out, surprisingly, by characters who are in this story, despite the fact it's been 100 years. But the whole thing is, it kind of slowly is used as a way of revealing that by having this put on him, Jig he's not actually the hero. If anything, he's the MacGuffin, or even a villain at the end of the day. Like, the kid's psychotic because of what's been done to him.
Yeah, that was also a very interesting twist too. And even as far as Troma goes, you know, the invisible man we mentioned, even in the first chapter, it turns out that he's a dragon as well. So there's that.
So something interesting about the series is I think it tries to lead you along a bit to treat Jig as the main character, and he certainly is our main perspective. But what's really interesting is when this was actually serialized in Viz's Weekly Shonen Jump, both authors were given a chance to leave a comment. And they both pretty much said that Troma is the actual main character, which kind of, it paves the way a little bit for your expectations, but I think still doesn't actually give away any of the twists and turns that are coming. Which is really neat. And Troma is, how can I put it? Troma's a really interesting and frustrating character to have at the center of a comic.
Yeah.
So he's an invisible dragon, which in turn makes him an invisible man, because dragons can turn into a human-like form. But it's not that he's invisible, it's that he's hollow. And this is both a literal and metaphorical thing. He's empty of experiences and desires and wants, and treats everyone as equal in his eyes, and just wants to help them reach their dreams because he feels it fills him somewhat inside. And the thing is, not a single word of that is supposed to be treated positively. And as you get through the series, you realize that this is a massive criticism of people who, not who don't take sides, but who don't form their own actual opinions and desires, because ultimately the way they regard others is worthless. And that's wild. This is Shonen Jump, the world of, again, friendship, effort, and victory. And it has those elements to the story, but it's incredibly critical of the way that these sorts of stories work. I mean, like, your average Shonen Jump protagonist believes in the good of everyone. That's why every, like, villain eventually becomes some sort of hero. I mean, that's the Vegeta deal, even. And this pretty much turns around at the end of the day and says, like, no, you've got to understand some things are bad. Which, that shouldn't be revolutionary. But the fact that I can't think of many other series that actually sit down and say, like, hey, you need a value system, like, it's madness to me. And I feel like that would have resounded really well if it didn't spend, like, half of its run meandering around doing nothing.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It is really interesting that, like, the series is so critical of that kind of thing. When, I don't know, like on one hand, like, I can't think of too many Shonen Jump series that take that kind of stance, but also at the same time, like, as little as I've seen of Narita stuff, so I can't say that, like, I'm an authority on his writing or, like, the kind of subject matter he tackles. But I feel like I'm not super surprised, because it feels like something only Narita would tackle in a Jump series.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of an interesting thing you get out of having novelists write manga for Jump, because Nisio Isin, when he was doing Medaka Box as well,
oh yeah,
I think he went the polar opposite direction to this. Rather than, like, making a point of criticizing characters who stand for nothing, he made a point of just picking apart the entire way that the shonen sort of demographic works with a lot of its action series, the way it'll lionize certain events, that by basically going, yeah, but does any of it matter every arc? And each time the answer is, not really. I feel kind of bad for reading it. Not to criticize Medaka Box, it's easily in my top 10, like, comics of all time. But I think Stealth Symphony, kind of, by being shorter, it manages to make its own particular criticisms a lot easier to digest and appreciate.
Yeah, something I guess, as long as we're talking about the length of Stealth Symphony, the thing that really surprised me about the series, and I probably should have prefaced, I did used to read Stealth Symphony weekly when it was first running in the Viz Shonen Jump, and I think it was around near the end of that first arc where basically Jig is hired by the cyborg soldier school to basically help them rescue a bunch of people that are basically going to be sold as, like, slaves or whatnot. I think it was around the end, like, literally, I think, like, the chapter before the last chapter of that arc was around the point where I stopped reading it because I kind of lost interest in it. And I'm sure we could talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But so this was my first time, like, reading it all the way through. So I had no idea what to expect as far as the ending of the series went, because, you know, when we covered Takuma Gahara last time, you know, as much as we or I guess I should say, as much as I really wanted to like Takemakahara, at the end of the day, like, the fact that it just kind of ends, but also at the same time starts presenting all these ideas that the series wanted to do, but is never going to act on, like, that kind of left me feeling pretty underwhelmed. And, at the end of the day, it's because of that I can't, like, it keeps me from being too positive about that series. But still, Symphony does not have that problem. Mostly.
No, it does the opposite. It literally resolves every single possible plot it can think of at once, and it doesn't feel rushed. It's like terrifyingly competent at wrapping up every storyline it started.
I only slightly disagree in that I do feel like, compared to other canceled series that I've read in Jump, like, this one probably has the most satisfying ending I've seen. But I also feel like at the same time, like, you can clearly tell that, like, Narita had some bigger ideas as to where he wanted to take the story. Like, there's this whole underlying thing where, like, it's very subtly hinted at that, like, the world of Stealth Symphony, or I guess the world of Jimbocho, isn't our world. That, like, like with characters like Master, the female ninja. She talks about how, like, one day she was in the middle of a battle with a sorcerer in Saitama, and now suddenly she's here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the series literally ends by having the characters go to the other universe, which turns out to just be contemporary Japan, which is, like, is kind of odd. There's so much stuff that could have happened with this if it kept going. And I think Master and Slice were the two big sort of leads for that. But it didn't feel necessarily open. It's just that you knew that if there was more of this, there was definitely more that could have been done.
Yeah. So while I do feel like, as far as any resolution for this series goes, I felt like it had a satisfying conclusion, but I think it still felt rushed in a way where it's like, what was it? I think around chapter 18 is when, like, we get, like, so much info dump about, like, how Jig is, like, the key to this underground arc that all the dragons are going to use to, like, go to the human world or whatever. And how, like, the fact that there are different alternate universes with different cultures and languages and whatnot, like, basically spending an entire chapter just explaining, like, yeah, this is basically what I wanted to do. So, like, I feel like in a way, it kind of had the same problem that Takemakahara did, but the only difference being that, like, things still, like, the story felt like it still had a satisfying conclusion. It didn't just leave you with a bunch of ideas, like, it still resolved the story that it was telling.
A part of me always imagines the world where they didn't waste time with the human trafficking storyline and, like, leapt into all the crazy reveals sooner. And, like, if it had run 20 chapters with that sort of length, it genuinely could have been, like, one of the best Jump comics. Because, I mean, we alluded to it a bit earlier, but Stealth Symphony has one really kind of mediocre arc, and you can feel when it ends that they've been told the series is getting cancelled. Like, it has a chapter end and then inserts a 0.5 chapter in between, pretty much just to be like, here's the big reveals, let's start doing some actual plot.
I guess looking back, that's definitely an easy point where you could be like, yeah, this series doesn't have much longer. But, like, I don't know, like, it felt weird because, like, Slice, I think, could have been the antagonist of his own arc. Like, it felt kind of, I don't know, somehow to me it felt kind of weird that, like, he and, I guess, the orphanage director that we end up getting the reveal that, basically comes back into the story and plays a bigger role with the Dragon Uprising and whatnot. It felt kind of weird that, like, they were working together almost. Like, I really feel like they could have been their own separate antagonists. Like, they could have been the antagonists to their own arcs, and then maybe eventually down the line, then maybe they could team up and it would make more sense. I don't know, that's just how it felt to me.
No, I totally agree with that feeling. Slice, to me, is simultaneously the most exciting part of this series and the part where I really wish they'd properly given him his own storyline dealing with the vampire lady and stuff, because that feels like a really significant plot. And it's not that it necessarily stops, it's just that it doesn't have anywhere to go because they get wrapped up in this, in the big dragon, revival and arc storyline instead. Which is fine, but, like, Slice is really intriguing as villains go. Like, he's pretty much entirely amoral and more obsessed with his own uniqueness being taken away than actually being a villain.
Yeah.
But he's still definitely bad because, like, he's filled himself with life to the point of being able to wound himself to make millions now, like exploding people from the inside with cash. Because that's the thing. His power is that if he's cut, he generates money.
Oh my god, that was like one of the best things in this entire series. The deaths in this series are really gruesome.
Oh yeah, no, well, with the exception of one, but we'll come to that later. But they are just really full on, and that's kind of exciting in its own way. I don't feel like you get that a lot in Jump, at least not in sort of the post-noughties Jump.
Like, I think the thing that first shocked me like the most was because again, this was like around the point I stopped reading it weekly, but like that very last chapter of the first arc, which, you know, I do agree that like it's not great, and I think you were saying on Twitter that it was probably the reason that it ultimately got canceled in the first place. But I'll give it credit that like I thought the mystery as to like, you know, because the whole thing is that like, you know, the basically the company that is, you know, hoarding all of these people and transporting them, you know, I guess the leader of the company is like mixed in with these people because their hobby is basically, you know, seeing people get their hopes up and then just seeing, basically trying to pinpoint the moment where they're like dashed and they kind of revel in that despair.
Oh, it's really twisted.
Yeah. And there's sort of a mystery as to like, well, I guess not mystery so much as like, there's a bit of misdirection as to like, who is the chairman, right? Because like, we're kind of, Narita kind of like intentionally leads us to believe that it's this little boy, at first, but then we find out, oh, it's this mermaid chick.
Which I feel like ends up being a really good twist on a lot of plots that you get with mermaids as well, because they fulfilled like two main roles in fiction of either being a sort of luring men to their death storyline, or like the constant process of being like enslaved and captured by other people. It's really weird that you can kind of divide one fantasy race into those two categories of story, but it really is the main thing you get. And it's a nice sort of a nice twist on it all. And the actual backstory of the mermaid woman is real dark.
Oh yeah. I also really like Narita's ability to like tell an entire character's backstory in one page, and it doesn't feel like he's cramming too much info. Almost like it feels digestible somehow.
Yeah. Like, for a novelist, he's got a really good sense of the economy of comic storytelling, which, I mean, a lot of people who write for artists, especially in Jump, don't have that skill. Like, Sugimi Oba needs, like, a big old stamp on his head saying, cannot write for comics. Not that his writing's bad, but, like, he's a really big contrast, because that's someone who's not a novelist and yet writes novels in front of the art. And then you've got an actual novelist like Narita, who's really letting the art breathe and speak for itself a lot, but also still giving you a million bits of information all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, Narita really feels like he understands comics better comparatively, which I really enjoy. But kind of going back to that first arc, you know, the twist with the chairman being the mermaid, you know, that was already a pretty well done twist, but then like, you know, as it turns out, that little boy that was so heavily featured at one point, you know, turns out to be a part of the Assassin's Guild, which I feel like are a really interesting group of characters that I really wish we could have seen more of, or at the very least, like if this series had a longer length, like I would have loved to see more of them.
I mean, you've got like 4 main companies that really, they somehow all turn out to be involved in this storyline. And I feel like you could really do a lot with all of them, but the Assassin's Guild in particular, there's so much potential for their weird sort of rule set. And this little boy as well, it has to be said. First of all, his power is kind of crazy because it involves like skeletons pulling people into black holes. But also, he's got the worst hair I've ever seen in a comic. It's like someone's planted like an oddish in his head or something. Like he's got normal hair and just these couple of long strands of grass coming out the top. It's really weird.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. But no, yeah, that was kind of one of the first moments that like really shocked me. Was like, what's her name? Waves, I think that's how you pronounced it. Is about to like start her attack. Once she's already been like, clearly she's been defeated, but I think she's about to attack. But then like you just hear something crunch, and like next panel is like literally her broken arm with bones sticking out and everything. Like it's it's pretty gory almost. And then you just see her being pulled from the mouth like into this black hole by a bunch of skeleton hands, and it's like, I wouldn't want to meet this kid in the dark alley. Like that was legitimately terrifying.
And I love that stuff. I feel like as much as I've said that the arc almost definitely got it cancelled, and I mean, you're kind of the proof in the pudding for this, Colton, because that's around where you stopped reading the first time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but like, it still totally has this thing that's really strong about Stealth Symphony, in that it's every twist feels not necessarily smart, but you don't see it coming, and it still makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it just comes out of nowhere. Which, like, I think there's definitely a point where, like, you could kind of feel the twist starting to pile up, and kind of my theory as to maybe another reason why it got canceled was because maybe the twist just got to be too much, and maybe because it feels like it kind of gets to a point where, like, there's so many twists upon twist upon twist that, like, you almost kind of lose track of the story a little bit.
I think that's kind of fair. Like, I think it might just be that I'm a sucker for this sort of storytelling where it turns everything on its head. But like, I found the twists were the only things really keeping me engaged.
And I mean, I agree with that. I'm just saying that, like,
but it definitely could turn, especially a lot of the younger readers. Like, I could see it turning them away.
Oh, I cannot imagine being like 10 years old reading Shonen Jump and being able to keep up with any of this at all.
And like, and some of the twists are really weird. Like the chief of the VMV Corporation turning out to go and be the legendary hero who dealt with the dragons, and the police chief turning out to be like someone who fought alongside him. Like that, when you have that twist as well, you start thinking, okay, now we're getting a few too many.
Yeah, just a lot of really weird twists like that. I don't know. Like, that's the thing. I like the twists a lot, and I agree with you that they were kind of the only thing really keeping me engaged. But like I said, at the same time, I could just imagine, other people getting turned off because it's like, okay, well, I could see maybe like people being like, oh, this has too many twists, or trying too hard, or whatever. I don't know. Not that I necessarily agree. I'm just saying, just putting myself in the shoes of somebody who maybe kind of got tired of Stealth Symphony, and ultimately,
that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think part of understanding why a series is cancelled, it does involve having to like even run counter to your own tastes.
Exactly.
Because like I mean, I have this a lot whenever I think about things like Hoopmen. To me, that's the perfect Shonen Jump comic. But I understand every single reason why people looked at that and said, "Oh, no, this is crap," and it got cancelled in 17 weeks. Like you have to slightly remove yourself from the picture when working out why readers didn't care. And I mean, there's probably plenty of reasons people wouldn't have cared about Stealth Symphony. It just feels a bit like a shame.
Honestly, I feel like Stealth Symphony probably would have maybe done better if it weren't in Jump, almost.
I almost want to say it would have done really well in Jump Square.
Probably, maybe.
But it's really hard to know, because that magazine's kind of a bit of a mess when it comes to working out what audiences want. Like, maybe even Young Jump, but then I feel like then it would be aiming too old.
Maybe.
So it's weird. It feels enough like a Shonen Jump series that I'm like, yeah, it belongs here, but it's also not enough of the sort of Shonen Jump series it would have needed to be to actually be successful.
Like, I almost feel like it's too dense for, like, I guess the core audience of Shonen Jump.
I mean, I'll say this now. If it came out under the current state of Shonen Jump, I feel like it would actually do pretty well.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it maybe doing better now, but
like with the goalposts moved enough that we've got things like Act Age and Dr. Stone and the Promised Neverland, which are all really atypical Jump series that have been given the time to actually thrive and grow. I feel like this would actually live perfectly fine alongside those.
Hell, I mean, even if even if Stealth Symphony were to be like taken out of Jump, like maybe it could have also ran in like Jump Plus or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I would have really liked it if this like continued as novels or something as well. Like that's what it would take to really get me on board with Narita novels. Is of I think a world that's this rich and dense would probably lend itself pretty well to being in prose.
At the same time, as I was reading Stealth Symphony, I couldn't help but keep thinking about Blood Blockade Battlefront, because this series really feels like that series, but written by Narita, almost.
You know, I was trying to think about this the other day. I was like, because I really didn't like it at first. It took till the twists really started going after that human trafficking arc for me to suddenly be like, oh yeah, this works. And now you've said it, I think the reason I didn't like it might have been because of Blood Blockade Battlefront. Because that started in 2009. That was several years before this. And like, the thing is, the way Stealth Symphony opens feels like it is very much ripping off Stealth Symphony. Nope. Blood Blockade Battlefront. My brain shut down halfway there for some reason. Yeah. It feels like Stealth Symphony's ripping off Blood Blockade Battlefront at first. But then, when everything starts to really be, like, turned on its head and messed around with a bit, like, I don't think it could be more different if it tried. But on the face of it, if you read that first chapter, you'll just be like, oh, it's one of these series.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But no, I mean, I think a reason why I love Stealth Symphony and why I really enjoyed Blood Blockade Battlefront, even though I've only seen the anime for it, is I really like these worlds where, like, you just have a bunch of different creatures just kind of coexisting. Like, I think, that's obviously an element of certain series I love, such as Gintama, even though Gintama really doesn't act on that element too much at all. But
yeah, now you mention it's kind of just there when they need it, isn't it?
Like, there's literally a joke at one point where, like, one of the characters is, like, reading off a Wikipedia article about Gintama, and it mentions a comment from Sorachi about how, like, he just can't be bothered to come up with new Amato designs. No, like, I think that's something where we haven't really talked about with Stealth Symphony, is that, like, not every character is human. Like, there are all sorts of, like, different creatures and monsters, like coexisting together, but they also make it a point to mention how, like, yeah, they all, like, work together and all, but, like, they, like, after work's done, like, they essentially, like, kind of go back to their own species, which I find kind of interesting.
Like, it's an integrated society, but it seems like everyone still has their own sort of lines drawn between them all, which is kind of wild. But I mean, like, to give you an idea, like, the police chief is a dark-skinned elf. The sort of style of one I see drawn a lot by, I'm trying to find a good way of not just saying pornographers, pervy artists on Twitter, right? Like, genuinely, she's so played to type.
Yeah.
Like, to the point that, like, her police uniform is pretty much fucking, like, lace and latex when it wants to be, which is, that's kind of rad in its own way, but also very odd to see in a book aimed at teenagers. Like, the head of the B&V company is, like, a proper small goblin man. I mean, we said it before, but Troma's both an invisible man and a dragon. Like, they tick off the boxes to the point where it's actually kind of refreshing and odd that Master is just a Japanese girl.
And then you have, like, Alice Nijigami, who we mentioned earlier is just a vampire. Her powers are interesting, though, because, like, using her, like, vampiric powers, she can basically take whoever's ability she just bit from, which is why, like, Slice is after her because of that. She obviously bit him at one point and took his power to basically create money, so.
And the thing is, like, it's not necessarily given, like, a big moral judgment that she does this, because clearly she takes a lot of them from pretty bad people. Like, again, Slice, I love him, is a bad person.
Very bad, yes.
But at the same time, like, it still acknowledges that what she's doing and how she does it is pretty wrong and messed up in its own way.
But she also took powers from a guy who, like, takes photos of this girl and blends them into smoothies or fruit drinks or whatever.
Oh, yeah, how have I not mentioned this about Slice?
That's such a weird quirk.
Well, it's not even that. I think everything about Slice is pure quirk. He goes along with the big bad enemy's plot just because he wanted to see what would happen. Like, he takes near fatal blows in the knowledge he'll survive because he's overflowing with life. Like, just to see, like, how much cash comes out of him, basically. Like, the dude is properly screwed up, but, like, they initially presented him, like, blending up photos of Alice as a thing of being like, oh, yeah, I've integrated her photo because I hate her, yeah. But then he starts offering it to other people as a drink, and he's like, oh, it's just really nice with a photo in this drink.
I just need a little fiber.
Genuinely, there's a lot of characters I could call my favourite in this series. I really like, is it Reika, the girl with the eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I really like her. I like the boy who's got the cyborg wolves that represent his emotions.
Colt Yukimiya.
Yeah, amazingly, I've saved loads of screen caps, but I've saved very few that have the actual names of the characters on, and it's driving me up the wall.
Yeah, I really liked him too. I mean, at first he didn't seem super interesting to me during the first arc, but we learn later on, because all throughout the first arc, because his whole thing is he basically trains these like cybernetic wolves or whatever, and all throughout that arc, they're like his wolves are basically giving Jig words of encouragement or whatever. But then we find out that like basically Colt and his wolves their brainwaves are connected or whatever, and he saves all of his like other emotions for the wolves. That's how he expresses his emotions, which I thought added a really like sort of relatable little layer to his character almost.
It makes it feel like a bit of a shame that they didn't use him more, because that sort of twist on the like really cool stoic character makes me think of a lot of stuff like in Black Clover, where like they present this cool exterior almost because they can't help it, because like all other emotions are used elsewhere. And like I really like that as an idea. But even with characters like him who are amazing, like Slice still kind of wins out for me just about. But I think there's only one character I don't really like, and I think that was kind of by design. Troma. I said this a bit earlier about him being a hollow person. Like there's no desires or wishes or real emotional stakes for Troma himself, because he's a hollow man or a hollow dragon.
I feel like if the series had a longer lifespan, I feel like Narita could have maybe like taken the chance to explore his character as far as that goes.
Oh, totally. And they do give it an amazing bit of work towards the end. I mean, explicitly with Slice rebuking his entire existence. If I can quickly find the panels.
Yeah, and even like even Jig kind of gets in on it too, almost, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like here we go. So there's all sorts of stuff towards the end. It's so dense with it all. But like Slice keeps pretty much saying like there's nothing inside you, and whenever he says this sort of stuff to Troma, the art goes completely wild and crazy and starts distorting, because like the realization that there's nothing to him and that he's not needed, whether it's said by Slice or Troma, like it breaks everything. Panels start moving out of line. The art loses its control. And I really love that as an effect. And both Slice and Jig really get to the point of it. Jig says, like, I don't think you're really thinking of others, Troma. Not me, not Alice, not even yourself. And Slice puts it the best to me. For someone who tries to, like, observe and help the people around him, he can't see those around him. Because it's, if everything has equal value to you, it's almost like saying you don't care about anything in the world. And that, as a single speech bubble, as a single quote, is quite possibly the most amazing criticism of centrist politics that I've ever read in a comic aimed at teenagers. Because at the end of the day, like, it's such a powerful message to it, and it's almost blitzed past in like the push to finish the whole story. Like, you can't have characters who stand for nothing, because you just start getting really annoyed at their lack of conviction or anything within them. Like, in the human trafficking arc, I got really kind of wound up by Troma, because, I mean, he was helping the human traffickers and whatever, it's a job, but his way of interacting with others of being like, oh no, I think it's great they're doing this and that you're doing this. You all believe in doing a thing. And I'm just like, to someone who's very, my principles are almost very much carved in stone. I believe the things I believe, to the point of sometimes being very irritating. I won't lie about that. Like, seeing a character with just such a lack of any substance to them as a deliberate design choice is a massive wind-up. And it pays off. It pays off really well. But there is, like, a good chunk in the entire middle of this comic up until they really criticize Troma's way of living, where I just really fucking hate him.
See, I definitely thought it was annoying at parts too, but you know, when we're first introduced to the character, it just seemed kind of sad more than anything, because like we find out in the beginning that like that Trauma was essentially like an experiment. Like the other dragons like basically created him as a way to like to basically win this war against the humans or whatever, or whoever they were fighting.
Yeah, they wanted him to be a perfect assassin, but like I think almost because he lacked substance, he just didn't have it in him to do it.
Yeah, which I think is kind of interesting. So like Trauma's essentially living this life where like he like I think you could probably make the assumption that like he probably feels like he has nothing to live for other than living vicariously through other people, which I think in a way is like really depressing.
Oh, no, totally. I think a really good design choice on the part of the creators is to have the mask he wears so people know where he is, have this permanent, fixed, like, closed-lipped smile on it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, it seems friendly when they want it to, but any other time you look at it, it's
empty.
Yeah, it looks empty, it looks lonely, it looks like a facade, like a mask, like, literally.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting, and I think that for me, this always comes down to the fact that I really think that human trafficking arc could have been like a couple of chapters instead of going on as long as it did, which wasn't even that long. I just don't like it. I feel like if they hadn't have made it so frustrating for so long to deal with him as that level of character, he could have really developed nicely. And I mean, and he does at the very end of the story. Like he's cursed somewhat with Jig's existence, which we'll explain in a bit. But, like, he's at least filled himself with something.
Mm-hmm. And I guess we can just get to that now. So if you don't want to be spoiled for this, maybe skip a minute or two. So, yeah, this was definitely, like, the most surprising twist in the entire series for me was that, you know, because essentially we find out that, like, Jig is sort of like almost kind of like the reincarnation of, like, the legendary Black Dragon. And, you know, he's obviously at this point where, like, he's not himself, he's transforming, and, you know, he's attacking all of his friends, and, like, they have, like, no way to stop him. And then, the best character in the entire series, Soya, who's been a pretty big character throughout the series, as he's the vice president of the Assassin's Guild, just comes in, slices his head off, and ultimately just kills Jig, who we just kind of assume is our main character, is just offed. He's just dead, and that's it.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, and the wild part of this is so we've not actually talked about Sawyer much because everything about him really relates to this twist. He's kind of just like, he's an assassin and a bakery shop owner for most of the story. That's our knowledge of him. And then at the very last minute, it turns out that he is kind of the main character. He was the original person they fitted this Black Dragon heirloom onto to try and like egg him up. And he died. He completely failed in the tests and he was brought back as an undead. Essentially with the plan in mind being that whoever was next, he'd be able to be an assassin and kill them. And he does, but not necessarily because he wants to, but because he was requested to by Jig, who has some small amount of himself left as a person. It, like, even by the start of Stealth Symphony, it's worth mentioning the Jig you see is a front that he himself is not aware of. Like, he's writing to his sister as the main plot device of, like, introducing all the concepts. His sister's dead, and it's at least partially his fault. Like, all the letters he sends turn out to be in his drawer with, like, return to sender things on them. He's responsible for the death of several other kids in his own town, and he justifies anything he's done by lying to himself that it's not really happened and just carries on with his day. Like, Jig is genuinely disturbing to read about as soon as you realize that he's not who he seems as a main character.
Yeah, that definitely caught me off guard the first time that was revealed to me, and man, it like just seeing him, like, because, you know, essentially, like, and I mean, I don't know, like, I almost feel sorry for him because, you know, obviously because this thing is attached to him, you know, it's basically his life support system, but, like, you know, because of its abilities and stuff, you know, like, everybody in his town is, like, afraid of him and basically just shuns him, and these just this group of assholes decide, hey, let's just burn his house down, which is pretty fucked up, honestly. And it's obviously because of that like his entire family dies. But, you know, because of his dragon heirloom's ability, like, he finds out where the fire came from, and he just, like, straight up murders these 3 kids.
Oh, he grabs a beam of wood and mushes one of them into paste. Like, on panel.
Just, like, on screen, too. Like, they don't bother to hide it or nothing. Just right on screen, just kill a kid. And it's like, wow.
It's not even presented as, like, this massive dramatic moment. Like, it's got, like, some speed lines and sound effects or whatever to it. But it's literally told like any other part of the story. It's very matter-of-fact of just, and then he crushes them to paste. Like, it's really fucked up, and I love it. And this defense mechanism of him lying kind of keeps it hidden. But, of course, the one other person who knows what his deal is, without Jig even knowing, is Sawyer for the most part, because he was the first one to wear this. He knows what the deal is. He knows it's not counterattacks, but lies to Jig saying, oh yeah, it is, but it's murderous intent, look. Which kind of perpetuates this lie in his head, which is what enables him to keep going. But then Sawyer turns around, reveals who he really is, like, does a big old beheading, and everything kind of just returns to normal with the dragons having failed, Which, when you say it like that, makes it sound really sudden, but it really just becomes kind of a matter of fact of, oh, you've stopped our plans now, I guess we're done. Which is like... Which is what would happen. Like, when your evil plan fails and you've got no other things to do, all you can do is give up, really.
Yeah, like, I mean, what else are you supposed to do? Like, you know, you don't really feel like hanging out, you might as well just go home.
But yeah, no, Sawyer, hands down, is the best character in this series in a lot of ways, despite not getting a lot of time with him, because everything he does is interesting.
Like, even like, just going away from his role in the story, like, he's just an interesting personality on his own.
Yeah. Like, Jolly Assassins don't feel like the rarest character type by any means, but it's a really interesting take on that sort of character.
It's just, like, between his personality and, like, his day job, essentially, he just owns a bakery, and it's literally called Assassin Bakery.
I love that. I mean, first of all, the main thing I love about it is that it's his hobby, because, like, I feel like it gets missed a lot when you've got characters in these sort of fantasy guilds and stuff, that they have a life outside of it. But the main times you really get to see him, just him with his hobby of being like, yeah, I've got this bakery, what are you going to do about it?
And I even love his, like, back and forths with Troma, and how, like, jovial and polite they are with each other. There's a point where, like, they're visiting the bakery, and, like, they just kind of start clashing with each other, and, like, you know, obviously Troma, being himself, is just kind of like, okay, I agree with everything you're saying. Hey, let's meet up for lunch. Okay, whatever. Or, you know, I forget exactly how the conversation goes, but it just turns into, like, the nicest conversation ever, but they're still fighting with each other, and it's, like, the best thing. Also, I love that his weakness is cockroaches. Oh,
yeah, totally. Like, it feels like this, like, kind of typical manga goofs in its own way with that, but it's really neat because he's so impenetrable in every other way. And, like, his response to the cockroach isn't just like, oh, I'm scared of them. It's like he starts acting like he's dying, coughing up like that, and feel like the mayor is not who they seem.
I love that moment of him just, like, noticing a cockroach, and it kind of, like, takes him a second. Like, I thought the comedic timing on that was pretty great, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the comedic timing on this whole series is, like, fairly solid for... I keep going to call it an action series, but it's really hard to categorize. It doesn't necessarily defy genre, but it's not really tied down that much to any particular thing.
Another one of my favorite comedic moments in the series is where, like, Rika is essentially, like, she's kind of spying on Jig, you know, with the intent of, like, recruiting him to their company or whatever, and she makes a comment about how, like, oh, hey, is it like, it's okay if I just rip this thing off this guy and take his spine with me, right? And the guy she's talking to over the phone, I think it's probably Hank, the guy who actually runs the company, is like, dude, what is wrong with you?
I mean, quick side note, Hank is literally just a dinosaur man, and there's no depth to him, but he's still a beloved character, because, like, he's literally just a dinosaur man who can punch really hard. That's it. And that's great.
Yeah, I mean, what else do you really need? I don't
Exactly.
like. I don't care if he's just a tool for exposition. Like,
And I mean, and again, you actually get like several good jokes out of this whole thing where Reika's observing Jig at first, because like she's following him, and like her eye cameras, which what she used to spy, like these little floating drones, like literally turn around on themselves because they're following Jig to her.
yeah, I thought that was kind of cute.
She's like, it was real fun.
But man, yeah, this series is like, honestly, and I was thinking while I was going through my second read through, I guess, is you know, if this series really picked up back then, like every chapter is so dense, like I just kept thinking to myself, man, if this series got popular enough, there would be at least one podcast dedicated to just this series, because I feel like if you really wanted to, like, this series really kind of opens up for that kind of podcast where like every week you're just kind of theorizing about what's going to happen next and like trying to guess the next twist or whatever. Like, I feel like it's dense enough for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I also think it's the sort of world that's well developed enough as well that I'm surprised there isn't just like a fan fiction community surviving out of it, and that, like, because you could literally take a single idea from this and expand it in your own little head, and that would be rad. And it didn't happen because it wasn't popular enough. But this has a lot of potential. Well, had a lot of potential.
And see, that's the thing with this compared to like every other series we talked about so far, is that like it feels like there's still a bit of lost potential because it ended way earlier than it was meant to. But like Narita still gave us a pretty satisfying ending, all things considered. Like, it's almost like he took it as a challenge.
Yeah, like it says a lot to his skill as a writer that he managed to make cancellation work for him. As weird a sentence as that is. And it's kind of a shame that we've not really seen more manga written by him, because I feel like there's so much more stuff he could do like this that'd be really great.
You know, I was just thinking also, like, Hi-Fi Cluster had the same problem too, where it's like, oh well, we just got the memo that we're getting canceled. Let's speed up the rest of our story, essentially, or whatever. Let's start tackling storylines that we probably wouldn't have tackled for a while, you know. Whereas, you know, with Hi-Fi Cluster, I don't think that ended as satisfyingly as this, unfortunately.
Hey, you know what's kind of wild as a sort of connecting thread here? Like, I'm pretty sure when we talked about Hi-Fi Cluster, something that came up was how much it was like Blood Blockade Battlefront.
No, because what was it? I think I mentioned it was because the one of the characters in that, I forget his name now, the one with the goggles.
Yeah, like the main kid is like Leo, right?
Yeah. I think that was the connection there. Outside of that, I think that was the only connection with Triple B there. But I mean, like, you know, like Stealth Symphony, you can make the case that like these have a lot of the same like ideas, like visually. Like, kid comes to town and, you know, wants to make a life for himself. He also has a sister that he writes to. You know, just stuff like that.
Yeah, the sister thing, as much as it made for a great reveal, that literally made it feel a bit like plagiarism at first.
Almost, but I mean, the like you said, there was still a good twist to that, so I appreciated that. Also, one other thing that I thought was kind of interesting that I'm not sure is a fault with the English translation, because, you know, they only know as much as they're reading at the time, or like if this is actually a retcon, but like, there is a point during the first arc where Jig mentions the orphanage director refers to her as male.
Wait, is there? Because genuinely, I was going through all the chapters with this in mind, trying to see if I could spot it, and I swear to God, I did not notice.
Yeah, I'd have to look up the chapter, but it's like right before the raid on the trailer. I think around the chapter where like he first interacts with Colt or whatever. Whatever chapter that is, he does refer to the director as a he, when we obviously find out that the director is a she, and that's supposed to be another big twist or whatever.
I feel like you could probably do like a really good no prize out of that by just being like, well, Jig's crazy. What does he know?
I mean, you could.
But like, I mean, it's a shame if they did mess that up, because I was really impressed at first as to how it was almost entirely gender neutral referral, like all the way up to the big reveal. But
see that also begs the question, like, is that a fault on the translator maybe for maybe just like assuming that like the director was male?
I think the thing is, it was probably kept like the way gendered pronouns and stuff work in Japanese is kind of a complete fucking nightmare, so it's hard to be sure. But I think a lot of it would probably just come down to the fact that neither the translator nor the editor would really have much back and forth with the Japanese production team, and so like that it wouldn't have really been made clear, I imagine. I'm sure anyone who actually worked on it would know better than us, but with what little information they had, I think they mostly did okay, and it's kind of a shame to learn now that they may have fucked it up.
I mean, you know, I want to think it was something on the English side, but like, I guess you never really know for sure, but...
I mean, it feels like a planned twist, because like the director, they're presented all in shadow all the time, but their body, because they're wearing like this big old lab coat and a thick jumper in all flashbacks, like it kind of makes it so there's no real signifiers to decide if they're a man or a woman either way. So I feel like it was planned.
I mean, I would say the same thing, honestly. Like, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
And yet the weird thing is, it still surprised me.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either.
Which I probably says more about our default expectations for what sort of person works in what sort of role, and that's a shame in its own way. But like, when I got to it, I had to stop and go back to like be like, really? Was this not confirmed?
So something else that like I kept thinking all throughout the series was does Slice kind of look like a combination of Chroma Lucifer from Hunter x Hunter and Crocodile from One Piece to you, or is that just me?
Thank you. I've been trying to work out who he's been reminding me of for like the last 2 days. But no, like he's very much, if you like stuck Chroma Lucifer's head on Crocodile's body, because a lot of it is just fashion and hairstyle and lack of eyebrows and whatnot. But like it's a really strong connection in my mind now you said it. Like, I totally get that feeling.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that, because it's like I like, as soon as I thought that, I couldn't unsee it.
Oh no, totally. Like I can really feel that. There's a lot of interesting, weird things in Signs. I don't think there's a lot of things where I think a catch feels like a rip-off, but there's some things that do confuse me sometimes. Like so Master's whole deal was that she's dressed up as a ninja all the time, to the point where it's kind of a reveal to turn around and go and say, "Hey, she was a woman as well," right?
Uh-huh.
But the thing that gets me is, inside her uniform, she's wearing a hair clip that looks like a shuriken, and that can't be comfortable, right? Like, I know it's a design thing so that when she's out of uniform, you can be like, oh, she's a ninja. Yuna and the Haunted Hot Springs actually has a very similar thing. But, like, that bugs me a weird amount for something that's completely inconsequential. Or Reika's something that gets me. So she goes on about how, with all her jobs, her money pretty much goes into maintenance of the iDroid technology she uses to see. And at first you think, oh yeah, that's probably pretty expensive. Then it turns out one of the eyes is a giant satellite, and you're like, she can't be getting paid that much. Like, no way.
What I find pretty wild is that Master can just throw shurikens from the Earth into space. Like, that shouldn't be possible, but it is, apparently. Oh my god. I was pretty floored the first time I saw that. Like, okay, I guess I'll just accept it.
I feel like, actually, that's probably the time I'm putting it. Because we're getting towards the end here, I think.
Yeah.
If I were to really think of Stealth Symphony in any particular way, it's the sort of comic where you have to accept everything that happens and just be like, yeah, okay, sure, and move on to the next thing. Whether it's because you know there's a twist coming or because there's so much things happening in it. Like, while reading it, it doesn't feel like you can really stop to think about the implications of stuff.
Yeah, I think we are kind of winding down here, because there's so much that I think we could talk about Stealth Symphony, but like, I feel like we hit on a lot of points that like we really wanted to touch on. Except, actually, I forgot. I totally wanted to mention that, or maybe I mentioned it earlier in the podcast and I just forgot. I wonder if the series had gone on, because, you know, we have that big thing where, like, you know, Jig is ultimately killed off, which, again, is such a huge moment that, like, I wasn't expecting. I wonder if the series had gone on, that, like, Narita maybe would have used that as like a springboard to maybe, like, develop Trauma more as a character, and maybe kind of, like, slowly like wean him off of his philosophy.
Well, I was thinking about this a lot, actually, because what was a very specific thing I was thinking. So if Stealth Symphony, instead of being like this larger story about Jig, what if Jig was the first storyline?
Yeah.
And then, say, they abandoned the human trafficking thing a bit, which I know I keep saying, but genuinely I feel like it takes away from how I would have liked the series to go. And if they'd just gone in and out, this like crazy 12, 15-week storyline about Jig turning up, going through the whole process of getting a job and that, the big twist happening, and it ending with, I mean, Trauma and arm down, Sawyer revealing like his strange past, and that he's the only undead in the story, I think, which is kind of wild because they're mentioned really early on, and it builds this world. So if it had done all that, finished that, and then gone, here's our next story about Trauma and character B, you know? I feel like it could have been amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it feels like there's probably a bigger purpose for that scene, but obviously, you know, it still Symphony ended when it did, so we're never going to see it. So
yeah, and that's my main takeaway from Stealth Symphony. I think is that it's a series where I really want more, because I feel like there is more that could have been done there, even though it wrapped everything up. Like, it's a really rich comic.
Yeah, that's my thing about the series too, is that, like, I am slightly disappointed that we're never going to get any more, because there are so many, like, big ideas that Narita obviously had that if the series had gone longer, he would have taken the time to really kind of, like, build up and explore. And there would have been a lot of great payoff, I think, down the line. But for what we got, it is the least disappointing canceled Shonen Jump comic I've ever read, which I think is really saying something. Even outside of, like, whatever series I've read that weren't ever picked up by Viz, like, you know, I've read a few other canceled series in my day that, like, you know, I used to follow weekly through various means, and
oh yeah, like we don't need to beat around the bush. Like we've both done our bad deeds in time. Yeah. And yeah, it's pretty high up there for ones I feel like satisfied with as a cancelled comic.
Yeah.
If I had to put it on a scale, I'd put it above stuff like Double Arts, which is one of those big ones people really lamented the loss of. Naoshi Komi's series before Nisekoi, which was supposed to be his like big rocket to fame, and then fell apart. Like, it really is incredibly good. Like, really, it's only really below, like, Hoopmen and Cross Managed for me, maybe. And even then, with Cross Managed, it's a closely run race.
Oh, man. I really need to get to Cross Manage.
I mean, it's worth doing. As one of the only ones you can still actually buy in English, it's worth doing.
But no, yeah, I think just out of the ones we've covered on the show officially, like, Stealth Symphony, I think, is so far the one that I feel most comfortable recommending to people actively.
I mean, I've got to check what I've rated. I've got to check what I've rated it on Analyst, but I feel like by talking about it today, like, whatever I've rated it, I've got to add, like, an extra star, because it really is a good comic.
I think I gave it like a 7 out of 10 just because again, for something that got canceled, I feel like is way more solid than it should be.
Oh yeah, like it's the sort of series where I think if you gave it to a lot of people, they might not actually realize it was cancelled, which is pretty uncommon.
Mm-hmm. Like, I guess just to explain, like, my rating system, like, I usually give 7s to things that, like, I either, like, I at least enjoyed, or stuff that, like, I think is, like, solid, but isn't stuff that, like, I'm necessarily, like, ride or die for, like, say, Gintama. But that's just kind of how I rank things personally. What did you give it, Maxy?
I'm trying to find it on my Analyst, but the problem is I've read so many goddamn comics. Which sounds like boasting, but it's not. I feel intense shame about the amount of things I've read because, I should really get out more. I will say as default, I like using a star system. I tell you what, I will say officially, whatever I had originally given it, I'm upping that to 4 stars. Star systems I find are good because it's a lot harder for people to do that thing of going, oh, you rated it the same as this, so it must be as good as this, because when you've only got 5 points, it's like you can say, yeah, but there's no nuance here, ignore it.
You gave Stealth Symphony 2 stars.
Oh my god, what was wrong with me? Yeah, that's going up 2 star points. I think it's because before I started revisiting Stealth Symphony, I was mostly thinking of that human trafficking storyline and how much I just didn't dig it. Because even when rereading it now, like, it probably works out to about a quarter of the entire comic, but it really drags.
So yeah, I guess it depends on the patience of the reader, because, like, while I thought it wasn't anything special, I think reading it weekly probably feels a lot more arduous, I guess, because, I mean, obviously that's part of the reason why I initially dropped it, but like, reading it in one go I don't think is as bad, but I do agree that it's like the least interesting part of the entire story. Even with the neat twists with who the chairman of the company is, like, it's still kind of Which is weird to say about an arc that involves pieces of a broken truck being formed by water into a giant truck water robot.
Oh yeah, no, this is the thing. There's still amazing stuff happening in this. It feels strange to be so critical about it, because I feel like in any other comic I'd be like, oh, this was fine. But I think because it runs counter to how much I loved every single other chapter in this comic, it really wound me up somehow. I will say, like, we're talking about it now. It's pretty hard to read Stealth Symphony in English now because it was never collected in 2 volumes, whether physical or digital. Which is kind of a nightmare, and it's a recurring problem for us when we're talking about a lot of these things. Hi-Fi Cluster had it too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a shame because I feel like, I don't know if this would be like a good seller, but I feel like if you had just all 3 volumes available, they'd still sell steadily, like, all the time to people curious, especially, like, off the name of, like, Ryohgo Narita. Like, people are going to be interested in it. And it also makes it really hard to recommend to people.
Yeah, it really kind of hurts me a little bit that, like, and I know I'm probably going to throw a little shade here, and I apologize to Annalise, but I mean, like, it kind of hurts me that Takuma Gahara is available, but, like, Stealth Symphony isn't.
Well, here's the thing, right? I liked Takuma Gahara, right? I agree. I feel like out of every single cancelled comic Viz running weekly Shonen Jump, the one that I'm most bummed isn't collected in volumes is this. And you can still get it. I mean, I'm sure it'll be in show notes or whatever, but, like, it is on Bookwalker and eBook Japan now. You can buy it in Japanese, and if you want to jump through hoops to, like, feel better about reading it whatever way you want to, that's the way to do it. Buy it, then do whatever. Sure, no judgment.
So yeah, thankfully there is a way to buy it, so that's good.
Yeah, there's still a way of showing your support to what is one of the most interesting cancelled comics we will probably ever actually talk about.
I mean, that's probably not wrong.
I mean, who knows? There may be one day in the future where we talk about some of the stuff in Japan, and I'll get to tell you about, like, the complete insanity that is Yoshio Sawai's Chagacha, the quickest cancelled comic in Shonen Jump ever.
Oh yeah, I should probably put that on the list.
I mean, it'll be one to do one day. I've got to actually buy the volume of it in Japanese at some point, because it's tragically bad, but it's so interesting. It would definitely be something to talk about.
Oh.
But no, like, Stealth Symphony, really, really good.
Better than it should be.
Yeah. Like, if you were subscribed to Shonen Jump in, what was it, 2015?
2014.
2014. If you were subscribed to Shonen Jump in 2014 and you've just, like, not read Stealth Symphony, go back to those issues. It's worth reading.
If you started a Jump subscription in February 2014 and still have it running past July 2014, then you have the issues that include Stealth Symphony. Which thankfully I did, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to read it.
Well, yeah. And it feels strange that that's how we have to explain to people how to read stuff in English, but such was the state of how this stuff worked before. I mean, is that how it is for Robot Laserbeam now? I don't think that ever got announced for print, did it?
I don't think so. I'm sure maybe it could get like a digital release at least. See, that's what I want Viz to start doing is, like I understand like it's probably asking too much to get some of this stuff in print, and I understand that. But it's like, if you're not going to do print, like I don't think it would lose too much money if you did a digital only release. I think people would still probably bitch about it, but like there'd still be a way to read it.
Oh yeah. It would be really neat, and it's strange that they really didn't do anything with it. It feels like this shouldn't be the way that these Shonen Jump things run anymore, especially because like Robot Laserbeam ran a year. It ran a year, and that's a long period of time where you had to have been buying Shonen Jump to be able to read that English release.
Yep.
And Stealth Symphony, that was half a year. That wasn't nothing, and the issues aren't. They're not expensive, they're ridiculously cheap, but to had to be reading, that was difficult to say, these issues to like be able to go back and read something that had clearly a lot of work put into it is really a bummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really unfortunate side effect of Viz bringing over a certain series like these. I really hope they do something about that at some point.
Not just that, but it's made me realise that if we ever do one of these about, like, Robot Laserbeam, because it was cancelled, that's going to be hell to reread.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how storage works for you, but, like, I just, as far as, like, the Viz app goes on my phone, I just kind of have it, because you can, like, set it to however many gigs of space you want your digital comics to take up on your phone, at least, and, I just have mine set all the way up just so I don't have that limiter. It helps me personally, but, like people organize their stuff differently, so.
I just, my phone doesn't have a lot of storage on it, and I, at any one moment in time, have like multiple gigabytes of comics on there that I'm flicking between. If anyone follows me on Twitter, if they see a thread where I do my currently readings, I will be reading a lot of comics very fast all the time. So, like, going back for old issues of Jump is slightly difficult. I could only have 2 issues at once on my phone without filling up my storage. So, like, it took a bit. It took a little bit to actually read through Stealth Symphony.
All right, but I think we're about ready to end this here. Maxy, thank you so much for coming on and talking about more canceled Jump things with me. I cannot wait for the next one, as I still haven't decided what we're going to cover next, but we'll figure it out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always love the chance to come on and talk about them, because like a lot of these series I won't think about once they're done, because because you can't really afford to with a lot of Jump series. They come at you so fast and so frequently, you don't really get to sit down and think, what did I think about this? Like, you just kind of have a vague memory and move on. Like, I rated this 2 stars, reread it and loved it. So, like, clearly I just hadn't been thinking about the bits that were good about it this whole time.
And I mean, that's why I'm glad that these podcasts exist, because it's like, sometimes I'll be like, hey, what did I think of Hi-Fi Cluster or whatever? I'll just go back and listen to that a little bit. So,
Yeah, it becomes a really interesting way of revisiting comics that are really treated as disposable by their own publisher. So I'm always glad to keep doing these with you, man.
But where can the good people find your stuff?
Okay, first and foremost, you can find me on Twitter at MaxyTheBee. It's mostly me talking about whatever catches my interest at any one moment in time, usually manga and comics and Transformers. But it's also a great way to get updates on the other stuff I do, such as Friendship, Effort, Victory, the returned podcast where I talk about the various titles and history of Weekly Shonen Jump. It literally returned just over a week ago now. The next episode, as of this recording, the next episode should hopefully be up by the time this goes up, if that times out correctly, which will be about Black Clover. It's got a fun little channel switching mechanic to how I do it all, so it's like just cuts away to random bits of audio or fun little segments. I'm trying a new approach to make it more enjoyable for me to record it, and people seem to be liking it, so fingers crossed I don't just stop after 5 episodes this time. God, poor season 2 of Friendship Effort Victory, it never really lived. What else do I do? I've said you guys can find me on Analyst, and really though, those are the 3 things to pay attention to at this moment in time. Friendship Effort Victory, if you were subscribed to it on iTunes, conveniently, it turns out that that feed is now updating again without me having to do anything. So, congratulations. Otherwise, you can find the podcast on Friendship Effort Victory on any sort of podcatcher. I use Apple's podcast app because that's what I've got. Does the job. I think that's about it, really. Written content will be coming back to the Friendship Effort Victory site soon. I've got to catch up on a lot of comics, and the problem is with the nature of reviews is you need to do them while the iron is hot. Hopefully, I'm trying to get my thoughts together on the 2 new Shaman King series, which had their first volumes out at the moment. So with any luck, there will be reviews for those going up in the near future. And that's about it.
Okay, so I had no idea where to put this during our discussion, but I did not want this podcast to end before I told everybody listening that Slice has a dragon heirloom called the MacGuffin, and its ability, I think, if I remember correctly, is to cancel the ability of other dragon heirlooms. So, yeah, I just wanted everybody to know that. Like, I know it's not really important to anything, and we're done with our Stealth Symphony discussion, but like, Maxy and I would have been remiss if I released this podcast and did not tell the whole world or anyone listening that he had such an item. Like, that's such an amazing little, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a quick, subtle, like, literary jab. I don't know, but it's pretty great. But yeah, so hope everybody enjoyed our discussion of Stealth Symphony. Like we said in the show, you can find Maxy over at friendshipeffortvictory.com or on Twitter at MaxyTheBee. And as where you can find your usual host of the podcast, Lum couldn't make it on the show either because of Anime NYC one weekend, and then the weekend you're listening to this that I put this up, it's obviously, you know, holiday weekend for us in North America. It's Thanksgiving weekend, and he's off with his family doing whatever, being a family, I'm sure. And so, you know, obviously he couldn't make it to this episode, and he's probably not going to be on the next episode next week, but he will be back on the podcast soon. So don't worry about that. But in the meantime, I'm sure he would appreciate it if you followed him on Twitter at LumRamayasha, and also find him as Lum Ramayasha on other places such as My Anime List, Annie List, the Animation Revelation forums, and also check out his reviews on allcomic.com. And as for me, I'm Colton. You can find me on Twitter at SniperKing323. I do a few other podcasts such as Life Lessons, the Gintama Manga Cast, even though it's on a bit of an indefinite hiatus at this moment. We still have a huge backlog of episodes that you can listen to, especially if you not only like Gintama, but you're a fan of the Gintama manga that was released by Viz Media back in all the way from, like, what was it, like 2006 to 2009, somewhere around there. It's canceled now, so it doesn't matter. But please go listen to that podcast over at gintalifelessons.wordpress.com, as well as One Podcast Prevails at onepodcastprevails.com. Same kind of show, except my friend Doctor from the Ass Backwards Anime Podcast and I talk about Detective Conan, or Case Closed, whatever you want to call it, which is still being released by Viz Media, by the way. I really enjoy recording that show, as I am a fan of Detective Conan. So yeah, please go listen to that again. That is at onepodcastprevails.com. But as for All Comic and the podcast in general, you want to go visit all-comic.com to basically look up every episode of Manga Mavericks, because that's where we post every episode first. You want to follow us on facebook.com/all.comic or on twitter.com/allcomic_. But if you want to follow Manga Mavericks specifically, you want to follow us on Twitter at manga_mavericks, as well as mangamavericks.tumblr.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Manga Mavericks. Email us anything about the podcast. What are you reading? What do you think of Stealth Symphony? You know, what do you want us to read on the podcast and review? Email us about any of those topics of suggestion, discussion, whatever, at mangamavericks@gmail.com. We will read them on the show. We love getting your emails. But the most important thing, guys, is that you subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever you call it. It really helps the visibility of our show. So we would very much appreciate it if you did that. But that's going to be about it for this episode. Again, tune in next time where we essentially just cover a whole bunch of news because there's just enough news out there that it's time for another all-news episode. Who I'm going to be getting on for that episode, you'll just have to wait and see. But you probably already know who it is because, we have probably 3 people that we have on this show back and forth, in and out. You never know. But anyway, this has been episode 67 of the podcast, and we will see you guys next time for episode 68. Bye, guys.